Welcome to another episode of Ask the Experts. I'm your co-host, Jeffrey Walk.
And I'm Elizabeth Finlayson. We're from the networking group, TNG, which is Chicago's premier business networking group focused on helping members and making a difference in the communities we serve. Ask the Experts is an effort to share our knowledge with a wider audience.
Welcome to another episode of Ask the Experts. In today's episode, we will be discussing the importance of removing the root cause of pain and stress in your body and mind to improve your health, fitness, and ward off disease. Our guest today is Dr. Gregg Gerstin of Align Wellness Center in Northbrook, Illinois.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk with you guys. This is going to be fun.
Yes, totally. So, we were talking before. I had some questions about the world of chiropractic and how it's changed over time. I feel like as I speak to people who are in this field or people who've gone to chiropractors, they seem to me like they're going for different reasons or there's more going on. And so I'd like for you to explain just what is going on in the world of chiropractic and how has it changed over time?
Yeah, well, so chiropractic was actually founded in 1895, so it's really old. And what it was founded on was not necessarily a principle of getting rid of pain or aches. It was actually founded upon the principle of optimal health and wellness. You see, what chiropractic really focuses on is making sure and maintaining the connection between the brain and the body. Way back when we were in elementary school, we learned that the master controller of our entire body was our brain. And it knew exactly what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and where to do it. And it was able to communicate with the entire body by sending energy from our brain down our spine to every tissue, organ, and gland. That's actually how we develop. When we first develop, the first thing that winds up being recognizable is actually a mass of nerves or cells that becomes the brain. And then off of that grows the neural cord, which is the spinal cord. And then off of that grow every tissue, organ, and gland. Now, through life, we experience stresses. And some of those stresses can get started even before we're born. And those stresses can cause shifts to individual bones, regions of the spine, or the entire spine. Now, most chiropractors will call those shifts subluxations. And what they are misalignments that wind up kinking the conduit or the outside or the protective layer around the spinal cord. And that's the spinal column. Now, those kinks wind up causing the spinal cord to get distressed. It basically stretches them out, or it may cause them to bend the wrong way. And that causes the energy from our brain through our spine into our body to have difficulty getting through. Now, the challenging part about this is that you don't have to be knocked out. You don't even have to be in pain to wind up having one of those shifts. We see that kids between 0 and 4 years of age have over 4,000 falls. Now, not many of them cause kids to have concussions or even to wind up having prolonged pain, but they can cause shifts within the spinal cord that can wind up straining it. And when the spinal cord gets strained, that energy has more difficulty getting through to the tissues, organs, glands in our bodies. And then our body winds up dysfunctioning. If it's left alone long enough, it'll get to a state of dis-ease where we might notice some visceral disorientation, changes in labs values or how we feel or even pain. And if we leave it alone long enough, it'll wind up causing disease. So what chiropractic was actually founded on was assessing and detecting misalignments and dysfunction at the root of where the brain connects to the body to tell everything what to do.
Wow, that's really fascinating.
Thanks. I think so. It's super cool to kind of come to work every day and get to see, I'll call it miracles happen. Whether it's that it's our patient earlier today who we've been working with, who's been having jaw pain for the last 9 months, all of a sudden get up off the table and be able to open their mouths fully without any pain. Or the concussion patient that I was sharing with you, whose medical doctors had already guided him to stay in his room for 3 months and stay in the dark. And he still was having symptoms. To find the cause of the problem as a disorientation in his spine, that caused him to have 3 concussions in 3 months, to be removed from all sports when this was an athlete, and to get him back to being able to try out for the basketball team, if there were tryouts in just a few months, to the mom who had such difficulty with their digestive system that when they went to the restaurant to have dinner back when we could, they'd ask for the table in the back by the bathroom because they'd be in the bathroom 40 times a day. To help that person go from 40 times a day to just 4 times a day after a year of working with every gastrointestinal doctor in the Midwest, from local hospitals to the Mayo Clinic to the Cleveland Clinic, and get her back to having her life. Those are the miracles that I love to see in our practice.
So that holistic approach and understanding about what's causing these problems is part of the challenge for most patients, because they have a problem with their appetite or one of their organ dysfunctions or a muscle problem. They're going to go to a specific person because everything is so highly specialized, and or their GP will tell them, go see this person, that person. They may not understand how everything is connected, and there really isn't anyone to go to. And a starting point sometimes might be a chiropractor.
Yeah, or if they are in pain, right? Some people have problem that get to pain within the medical, I'll call it model or hospital-based system. There's not someone that really focuses on this. Right, the general practitioner, and we work with many medical doctors, because as you can imagine, many of these patients that have chronic challenging health conditions, they go through the maze and they get frustrated. So we have many doctors here in the area that refer to our practice so that we can help unravel things. But many patients do come directly to us because we are a primary care physician and you don't need a referral to come into our practice. And we look to understand the foundations of health and spinal health. And then we work our ways off of that and around that to the rest of a solid foundation for health. So after we've wound up establishing and developing a solid, proper spine, because there's actually normal spinal position. I know for most people, they're like, what the heck do you mean normal spinal position? But there's normal blood pressure and there's normal blood sugar, there's also a normal position that our spine should be in so that we can, what I call, win the fight against gravity. Right? Because we all have seen the little old lady, I'll call it, not grandma, right? Because none of my grandmas or our grandmas look like that, but that winds up shrinking and moving like this. Now, what's happened is that long ago, they started to have one of those subluxations that caused them to begin to lose the fight against gravity. And gravity works on us all the time. If we wind up losing it, it progressively causes us to shift out of place. So for many people, they might notice it even as a loss of height. They might see it in their kids as in they're slouching or think that they're slouching, or their kids might see it in their parents. Finding this and detecting the cause of it really early is really important to wind up helping to provide a great health future. Because I actually studied with one of the leading medical doctors on this topic about 3 years ago, and it was really frustrating for her. She worked with, it was thousands of cases like this, and she couldn't get any improvement. Now, after she studied me and my colleagues who focus on this unique process called chiropractic biophysics, she understood why. She was actually what's called a gerontologist. So she would only work with people 60 and older. And what happens with these conditions of losing height is that it typically gets started between 10 and 30 years of age. So by the time they got to see this doctor, they had already had it for somewhere between 30 to 50 years. And at that point, it had developed so much steam that it couldn't be corrected. So early detection of proper spinal position is massively important. Now, there are some at-home tests you can do to wind up doing some spinal screenings. And if you want to learn about that, we've got some great videos on our YouTube channel that you can check out.
That's great. And actually, I think that's something we'll reference when we post this video.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
So one of the things that you talked about is this understanding and communication between the brain and the rest of the body. One of the challenges, of course, is dealing with the connections between individuals and their caregivers. One of the challenges I often find is the miscommunication that goes on within the healthcare community. And I think what you're doing is bringing sort of that Mayo approach where we start to work together.
Well, we definitely look to work together with medical providers because we don't have all the answers either. My medical colleagues do help with several cases too, where we don't see results. And if we're not seeing results, we look to call in for help because, a team approach works way better than flying solo.
Right. Now you talked about chiropractic. Do you also complement that with other kinds of services like muscle stimulation, acupuncture? Do you do those, or are those things that you complement with other service providers?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We look to provide several things, but I'll be honest with you, the care we focus on within our office focuses very highly within the spine. You see, the work we do is very detailed oriented in understanding the proper postures and positions of the spine, and then how to wind up changing an irregular spine back to normal or ideal without surgery or drugs. That we really focus on chiropractic care. We do some light physical therapies within the office. We also do some mechanical traction, some light nutrition, and lifestyle management. And we just introduced a cold laser to our office. That's been absolutely amazing for managing long-term chronic hard joint issues and helping them to get started in the right direction and reduce inflammation to them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that comes up for me is you've been talking about these events with people's spines and what happens. And also, you know, as a parent, I have 2 kids, and saying like, oh, you have to really be looking at this like early. It makes me think that once you would discover this and you would begin working with someone is going to have to be doing things between their sessions in order to be making these changes. They can't just like show up and be like, make the thing happen. It sounds to me like there's some work on the part of the patient. Would you say that's true?
So it is relatively true. You know, I kind of think of what we do as a bit of like an orthodontist. Okay, right? Like everyone winds up going to a dentist. We go twice a year, no matter what, right? If you didn't go to your dentist until you were 42, how do you think your teeth are going to do? Not too good. And you'll probably need to work with your dentist intensively, right, to manage the tooth crisis that you have. Right? But once you manage those crises, then you'll get into your regular dental hygiene program. So for most people, they don't pay any attention to their spine. They pay more attention to their car and maintaining their car than they do in maintaining their spine. And you can't replace a spine yet. We can replace our teeth. So for many of our patients, we work focusedly with them to get them to improve their spines from wherever they are to about 90% corrected. That's really our target. Now, the longer someone waits, actually, the more difficult it can become to correct the spine back to normal. Just like with your car, the longer you wait to wind up correcting an axle that's off, the more work it's going to take, the more expensive that it's going to be, and the harder it is to get regulated. For our patients, once we wind up correcting and balancing out their spine, you know, most of them realize, gosh, I should have been taking care of this since I was a kid. And we introduce them to a periodic visit care plan to help support their spine so that their spine can support them for the rest of their lives. Real similar to how our teeth, we look to support us for the rest of our lives. And you know what happens to our teeth anyway? We lose them. So for us, we work with our patients to wind up helping to set a solid foundation. And then we help them in their lives to add layers onto it, okay? Like physical activity, massively important. But there are so many people out there who have gotten or tried to start in an exercise program. And within a couple of weeks of getting started, they got injured. And then they give themselves a few weeks of rest. And they go back to something else or the same thing. Slowly, I'm going to just work my way into this. But still within a couple of weeks, they're injured. So I call that a false start. And I'll be honest with you, I was guilty of that. You see, for me in my youth, I was an endurance athlete. I did distance running. About half marathons was how far I got up to. The night of my engagement party, about now, I guess 11 years ago, I did an urban athlon. So that was a 12-mile run with 12 obstacles. On the third obstacle, I clipped my shin and my knee, and I stumbled the rest of the way. I said, I'm going to let myself rest, and I'll do some therapies. I know how to do that. And then I tried to get back to working out within a month, and I lasted 3 weeks. Oh, I must have needed more rest. I still cared for myself, and I tried to get back to it. I did that dance for almost 3 years. It was so frustrating. And then I had a colleague of mine actually evaluate me in a different way. He used this postural model to get me back to balance to normal. I worked with him for an extended period of time. And about 2 years ago, I finally felt good and tried to restart again. And this time when I restarted, it's been now 2 years that I haven't stopped. And the coolest part about it is that the running that I'm doing now and the distance that I'm doing now is faster than it was 10 years ago. The reason I think that that's happening is because I focused and I spent some time. It took time to set a solid foundation to build my body upon so that my brain could connect to my body and tell every tissue what to do, including my muscles. And then I added on physical activity, because physical activity put onto a broken system is going to cause it to break more.
So some of the challenges that once COVID, it starts to get released and we get back into normality, people are going to try to do, hey, let's get back into it. They should have a inspection before they drive on the road.
That's a pretty good idea. And, we've actually had a lot of people that realize right now, right, because I can't do a lot of things that I do, I need to focus on me and setting my foundation. But you're right. For many people right now, we're in a different workspace, we're in a different desk space, we're in a different living space. So actually on our YouTube channel, we've got a series of videos on how to set up your workspace at home so that it can support you better. So whether you're working on a desktop, a laptop, or even on a tablet, check out those videos to modify how you're working. Like right now we're on Zoom, which most people are using for just about everything. And I'm on a laptop. That's just how I choose to Zoom. But I'll be honest with you, I've got my entire, a significant amount of textbooks underneath my laptop so that I can bring this monitor up to eye level and I can look right at you. So those are some modifications we've guided for people to take. As well, working in those abnormal places have had and caused so many people to develop tension across their shoulders, numbness and tingling in their hands, almost like carpal tunnel syndrome, difficulty with headaches and migraines from staring at the computers way longer than they have in the past. These are things that we got to look at now. Now is the time to wind up looking at them. You can't wait until 6 months from now when hopefully we're able to get out. Because if we wait that long, we've seen that more people develop more advanced issues. So those things that might have been easier to take care of, where there are health care providers that are available, that are using proper protection, that are keeping their offices safe for you, to wind up getting health conditions assessed, correct, and changed, you can do. And the reason why those are available is so that they don't develop and advance. And when they wind up advancing, they not only wind up affecting you, I'll call it musculoskeletal or pain and aching, but because they can also wind up affecting how your immune system works. And
Yes.
Right now, we all have to be working to strengthen our immune system. So we all have these massive new obstacles going on in our lives, right? In my house, I've got 2 kids. They're the best. I love them. But when it comes winter time, just like last February, my sister-in-law, who lives in the city on her own independently and has a dog, we just realized that isn't safe and healthy for people. So we told her to get her butt up to us and move in. So now we've got another person and another dog in our house, and it just adds to the challenge. But I feel so blessed to have her. She's the best. But it just adds more emotional stresses within the system. And I'd rather have her emotional stresses and my family's emotional stresses than anything else, but we've got to have super solid ways to disperse those emotional stresses. And if gyms aren't open, and if it's difficult to wind up getting alone time in your home, there are some specific ways that you can work with professionals to get those targeted things that you need, so that when we do come around the other end of this, because we're people, we're developed to wind up adapting and adjusting to whatever's thrown at us. Our bodies are amazing. And if we spend this time strengthening ourselves, then we're going to end up on the other side better. So some of the things that we've been doing for our patients, and I'm going to share them for you. Is that cool?
Yeah, no, that's great.
To help everyone in developing their immune system amazingly, is to tell them to, one, get adjusted, right? That's what a chiropractor does. Connect the brain to the body better. Right? Better messages to your immune system means better response, means better health, means better you. 2, make sure you're getting some targeted nutrients that have been shown to not just even help the immune system, but have been shown to help reduce the likelihood and the severity of COVID, right? So I've been guiding folks on 3. First one is vitamin C, right? There's no reason that every man, woman, and child shouldn't be on vitamin C right now, and or elevating their doses to protect themselves. If you take too much vitamin C, you'll just pee it out, okay? And it's been one of the things that they've introduced in emergency rooms and hospitals when people start to spin down the inflammatory cascade from COVID. Second step, and this is showing up everywhere. I mean, in the United Kingdom, they're giving this out to every individual that's at risk. So why the heck shouldn't we all be taking it? That's vitamin D. Vitamin D intake and adequate vitamin D levels have been shown to reduce the occurrence and the severity of COVID. Okay. So now I'm going to share with you, I recommend that every patient of mine be on 5,000 IUs a day. We live in the Midwest. And right now we're heading into the dark season. So we don't get exposed to the sunlight out there. So what used to be recommended, maybe 1,000 milligrams, we got to up that right now. And we got to up that because of darkness, but we got to up that because of COVID. You can also wind up getting your vitamin D blood levels checked to see where they are. That's a regular thing that's done as a part of your panel, and most of your primary care physicians will order that every time they order a panel. The next one that I've been guiding patients towards is zinc. Zinc is a powerful immune boost and antiviral that has been helping many people, specifically right now with COVID. So I'm recommending 45 milligrams a day for every individual. In addition to that, everyone's got to be moving 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, however you do it. So right now it's getting colder out. So, I have a patient whose significant other, he walks around in a circle in his house. The dude beats a path 9 miles a day. I don't know if 9 miles is right for you, right? Like I was asking her, I was like, so you guys live in like a mansion, right?
They probably need to call Larry for new carpet.
They probably need, yeah, that'd be Steve, but yeah, they'd call Steve for some new carpet. But movement is essential. If you can get outside, I like it better because you then add in the fresh air.
Right.
And then lastly, I love breathing exercises. So I like a box breathing, which is 5 seconds of breathing in, 5 seconds of holding, 5 seconds of releasing, 5 seconds of holding. I like to do 5 reps of that a couple of days.
There's a great book by James Nestor called Breathe. If you get a chance to read that, it talks all about the value and the practice of breathing and breathing deeply and how it helps prolong health and promote stability.
Super. I might have to pick that up.
I think what's great that I'm hearing in what you're saying is, if I'm going to be totally honest, I don't think I've known a time in my life that my body has been worse than since this pandemic. Between like what I'm eating and not eating, the lack of movement, the lack of sunlight, it's and then all the things you described, like my first working spot was like the bed, because I was like, oh, this is like the place where, well, first I was in the basement, it was dark, and then I was like, no, I'm going to be in the room with light, but then I was on bed. My husband was like, here's this old chair, and then the old chair was hurting. Now I'm back in the basement. It's just one of those things where I haven't found like an ideal spot. And so everything you're saying, I'm like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Like everybody's gone through this time of adjustment, and everybody is working to find what works and maybe not doing ideal things. So it's really great too to hear you're like, yeah, adjust yourself, do these things, and here are these other ways you can be supporting yourself. There's a world of things that you're looking at that help someone get to optimal health.
Thanks. Yeah, we look to wind up taking a whole person approach, but realize that the foundation needs to come from connecting the brain to the body, because we've been told since the cows come home that we need to eat right and we need to move. But unfortunately, I'm not sure that that's helping us get healthier. Because as we've been told that over the last 20 years, our obesity rates have gone up, our overweightness have gone up, and whether it's in the instructions, the delivery, or the accessibility, I'm not exactly sure. Or what I think it is really us taking responsibility for our health. That's really, to me, what winds up being the biggest thing, is us as individuals saying that there's not a drug, there's not a surgery, there's nothing that's going to wind up healing me. I've got to be personally responsible for myself. And every day that I wake up, I need to say to myself, what am I going to do today to be healthier than yesterday?
Yes, that's an interesting point you just made. When we need to take care of our cars, we abdicate our responsibility to the mechanic. When we have to take care of our bodies, we abdicate that to our doctor. We don't
That's
put the person. That's the challenge.
Right? Because our medical doctors are amazing at managing disease, right? If we were to look through their education on how much health they get, there's not much. And it's not their fault, right? We need our medical doctors to be amazing at managing crisis, right? We need them to know all the nuances on every different condition and what can go on and how to manage it. But we don't need that same person to be managing our health. We need someone who's just as intense and focused on understanding the principles of health and the layers that need to be applied to health to be able to guide us through our health development process. And then have our medical colleagues there to manage our disease crisis. And that's happening massively. Many medical doctors actually are bucking the medical system because what they thought was they were going into was helping people to be healthy. It's not what it necessarily is. And they're shifting their focuses into more of natural means and natural focus on helping people to understand and unravel things naturally. And we're glad to be a part of that.
So if you were to draw a line across the screen magically, and you were to say, okay, on one side, we have the prevention. On the other side, simplistically, we have the treatment and maintenance. Where would you say that your practice is today, and when you work with patients and educate them, as you're educating our audience, where do they start to use you to become more on the prevention side?
Yeah, so well, I mean, I would probably divide, if I were to divide it, it would wind up being on lifestyle and health development and then crisis management, right? Because that's really the two directions. And most people come to us in crisis management because I'd probably say about 75% of Americans live in that world. That's what we're brought up in. That's what we're educated towards, right? To go to school, you go to your medical doctor, but your medical doctor is primarily an expert in managing diseases. So we're taught from a young age that if we don't have a disease or a label, then we're healthy. But that's not really the truth. The truth is that health is a state of optimal health, social, physical, and emotional well-being, not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. So it's a constant and never-ending pursuit for developing your body so that it works better for you. So for most people, when they come to me, they're in a bit of a crisis mode.
So I have a question. Well, we've talked about, like being part of a team and the reliance on medical doctors and where those lines are. I wonder if you find it easier to work with a medical doctor who already has a little bit of that mindset, and maybe they're already kind of gearing people towards like nutrition or certain things, and then have you as part of what they're doing. Or, for instance, somebody who's doctor's like, here's my line, I do this, you do that, let me send you over to you. What do you think kind of works in your team?
So I'll be honest with you, it's probably a lot more of the second option. And I think that has to do with geography, okay? Here within our area, the healthcare systems are not set up to wind up relating very well with people who are outside of their system. So I'll be honest, this has been a struggle for me my entire practice. North Shore University Health Systems doesn't recognize chiropractors. I'm calling it out.
Yeah.
I don't really say that. I mean, I know, Jeff, your eyes go big and wide and you're like super surprised by that. But there are none within their healthcare system.
Yeah, I understand that.
If you go to one of their doctors, right, a primary care doc or even a specialist, it's very unlikely that they're going to recommend you to a chiropractor. What they do say is that they've got what they call their wellness center, which is based out of the Park Center, which is off campus from any of their other facilities, where they have acupuncture and massage, and I think they may have some nutrition. So they might send you there, but it's a very different experience and process. And I don't know if it's that they just don't know how to integrate it within their system or if they just don't want to. I used to have a friend who is heavily involved over there, and I asked her about it, and she says, I don't want to get involved, right? So North Shore isn't the only one that's like that. Northwestern's like that as well. We relate really well with the folks over at Illinois Bone and Joint. We have several doctors there that we work with, interrelated and more of a team than independents. But otherwise, it's usually more independent just because of the way that the systems are set up.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to the reimbursement model, which is a separate conversation.
I mean, we do work with insurance and our provider for most. We have an in-house billing team that winds up helping us with that. So if people are curious as to whether chiropractic is covered by their benefits, it is for most, and we have really affordable ways otherwise to get care.
That's really great to know. I feel like this conversation's been all over the place, but I really do want to appreciate like the honesty and the way that you've sort of just been like, this is how it is. I think that is really helpful for people when they're making their own healthcare decisions and they're deciding how do they want to manage things. I know on a completely unrelated issue, I once had a situation where I had gone through all the medical doctors for everything and was ending up in tears. I was like, I'm still in the same problem, and ended up getting out of the system and getting a lot more wellness support through a naturopath. And it was really interesting to discover, the food allergies that I had that I'd always had and didn't know, and just all kinds of things. So it's really interesting to see, like, I wonder, thinking from like more holistically as a system and a model, how would we get to a place where they're more interrelated, maybe more like how Eastern medicine might be, or some other systems, I wonder.
Well, so my opinion on that is personal responsibility, and a shift to more of that. And it's difficult within the model that we're within in a insurance-based reimbursement system. But when people become more responsible for their own health decisions, they start to be more proactive about their health earlier on, and not just laying it on to someone else. And what we see is that when people are more proactive and more responsible for it, they wind up having different trajectories and making significant different decisions.
So that's interesting, because the awareness is based on our knowledge. We know that kids go through school and they get health education. I don't think people really know enough about how to take care of their car themselves.
Yeah, health-minded people are really, really typically focused on that. And, until I'm going to go with until, people apply that car model to themselves, then we'll still wind up running into those challenges. Because most people who are athletic, unfortunately, wind up wearing the tires bald and breaking down. Unfortunately, but that's just how our system is set up, at least right now, right? We don't wind up stopping until we can't go. Till we're stuck on the side of the road, and then we look for the pickup truck to get us and take us to the mechanic, which winds up being typically a surgical procedure. Whereas, if it was taken beforehand, maybe we could have avoided that.
So that's an interesting segue into another aspect of value that you offer in terms of chiropractic. When you talked about athletes, a lot of times more advanced programs are getting into cycles and periodicity. And when you have periods where you're coming back down off of a cycle, let's say, where you're working hard, that might be a good time to say, hey, let me stop in at a Dr. Gregg and say, how am I doing? Am I setting myself up for fatigue? Do I have imbalances that I need to correct, even though I feel good? And how do I prepare myself so I can perform more optimally in the next cycle?
You're right on. So for folks that don't know what periodization means, that means that when you're working in a sport or athletics, that you have a period of time where you're doing intense work to develop skills and or endurance or strength. And then you give yourself a little bit of time to recover or to get back to life. I see this happening not just in sports, but in life. Not only do athletes go through this, but like an accountant, they go through periodization too, right? Don't mess with them for the first quarter of the year or the third quarter of the year. Right? When we're talking about school age kids, don't mess with me during the school year, come back to me during the summer or break. So in life, we have periodization, and those are great times to wind up diving in, focusing on the basics and fundamentals, and then getting back to what you do. So for many of our patients, our college students and or our accountant patients, I'm trying to think of really focused periodization. Our teachers, they find that during their breaks, well, it depends actually. If they live near our office, then during breaks, they're able to dip in and focus hard and fast for a period of time. Or if they work near it, then during work times, it's easier for them to focus on here, and they realize that it winds up being an outstanding segue or break from what they're doing.
So fatigue is a big deal. And whether it's because we're confined because of COVID, or because we have intense work cycles, can create fatigue. And obviously it's going to have manifestations physically. But when you do that over weeks and over months, those kind of cycles really can break you down, and you need a long time to recover. It would be interesting to integrate some of these checkpoints. Like, okay, let's say I have finals over, let's say a week and a half period. And, halfway through, I'm beat, I'm mentally exhausted, I need a break. What if I went in and said, can you give me a refresher? No one would think of going to their chiropractor for that.
Our patients do. Actually, so most of our, once we start teaching them about that, they're like, "Oh my God, I need to get in. This is going to refresh me." When I was in chiropractic school, the greatest part about being in chiropractic school was I lived with 2 other chiropractors. So yeah, when we were cramming for finals or studying for board, we would take an adjustment break, and we get right back to it. because our brain got stimulated. We were able to focus. We were able to jump in and dive in. You know, it's not far off from the weekend warrior or even the yard work person who comes in after the weekend and is all beaten up, right? You get options. You can wind up getting checked before you do all the work and get set and ready to be on that high and go by getting checked before the weekend, or you can let yourself get all beaten up and then we got to do a lot more work to put you together. We love to see folks on the front end because I like smiling faces and happy people. But if you whip your tail, right? If it snows soon and you go out and you decide, oh, I've been sitting inside from COVID all the time, but you know what? For some odd reason, someone's going to leave my house and I need to shovel my driveway. And then you can't move. We're happy to help you get back to who you are. Sorry about if I like to do what I do, but I love to bring humor in and have some fun with it because, you know, helping people with their health is a serious business, but we got to have some fun with while we're doing it. And sometimes the stories that I wind up experiencing it and the people who we wind up meet when we meet, it winds up being kind of humorous.
Well, there's so many other things we could probably cover, and maybe a follow-up visit with Dr. Gregg might be in order.
We might just have to do it though after a periodization, okay?
Well done, touche. So it's been great talking to you, Dr. Gregg. If folks want to get in touch with you, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so you can reach us at our office. The easiest way is our website, Align, ALIGNWC.com. You can look me up, and I'm going to swivel this. Maybe it'll show my name. You could just Google me. I'm very Googleable, Gregg Gerstin or Dr. Gerstin. You can check us out on our Facebook page. You can also check us out on Instagram. Our YouTube channel is real popular as well. And we just started TikToking if you do that.
Elizabeth, I think we've good session. How do you feel?
Absolutely. I feel like I'm sitting up straighter already. So I know that it's working. So Dr. Gregg, thank you for your time together. This has been fun and helpful. I've certainly learned a lot. We greatly appreciate your expertise, and we know our listeners are going to find it equally useful.
Thanks for watching this week's episode of Ask the Experts.
I'm your co-host, Jeffrey Walk.
And I'm Elizabeth Finlayson.
Don't forget to send us your questions, suggestions, or ideas. As always, you can reach us at asktheexperts@gmail.com.
Have a productive week.